There we go. Greetings, friends of the apocalypse. This is Podcast at Ground Zero, your home for the apocalypse for episode 77, the Gamma World Fanzine. I am the apocalypse nerd. He is Adam Baumglance. I almost said your middle name. And
I don't think it's a state secret at this point. I think
it's,
we can let that flip.
But here you're Adam Baumglancy.
Here I am, Adam Baumglancy. That is correct.
And special guest tonight is Tom Wilson from Throw Eye Games. So yeah, hi to the folks, Tom.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. We're excited to have you. So what we're going to be talking about today is Tom from Throw Eye Games currently has a Kickstarter for a Gamma World fanzine. And when I say Gamma World, I'm talking about the good Gamma World, not the...
No, you don't want to be accused of engaging in, what did they call it?
Editions Wars. Edition
Wars. Yes. Oh, my gosh. Heavens to Betsy, we wouldn't want to engage in edition wars.
I'll engage in edition wars. It's the good Gamma World, and so he has a fanzine up for that, and he's also done some other Gamma World content, plus a lot of other old school gaming stuff. Now, I was telling Tom before the show, or I was trying to tell him, but then we had to get going here, was I don't like using the term old school, because I know there's a whole OSR movement, old school role-playing, old school gaming, which, I don't know. I just don't like the word because it makes me feel old. And
so it's that part where it reflects the reality. Is that the problem with this term?
Reality.
Remind you of your mortality, which is hurtling at you like a meteor towards the dinosaurs?
Yes, but because to me, it's not old school role-playing to me. To me, it's just gaming, because that's what I played for a long time. And it wasn't old school. It was just D&D or it was just gaming. Now, all of a sudden, that's old school gaming. It's like, I'm sorry, your gaming now is some kind of jumped up video game, anime BS, World of Warcraft, disguising itself as a paper and pencil role-playing game. But that's a whole other story. I'm
not sure how much more high-tech we're going to get in the tabletop world. I mean, I get it where, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis and Monkey Island and Doom and Wolfenstein were these old 16-bit games, back in the day, and now now Wolfenstein is something far more let's say video card heavy than it used to be, but I'm not sure where the giant jumps in technology have necessarily happened in tabletop. Do you know what I mean? There have been some nice changes. Well, there's some changes about
self-publishing, print on demand has really gotten good.
Yep.
A lot of people do a lot of with miniatures now, with like screens on a table for fog of war and exposing stuff. 3D printers for your own miniatures and terrain. So technology has affected it, and also
you're right.
And it also has affected it because a lot of times people who maybe all three of us used to play together when we were kids, but now we all live in different parts of the country, but we have the power of the internet to be able to play together online.
So we're going to use the internet to play first edition Gamma World. Now that's what I call progress.
It is. It's like, well, you know what? When we don't live, you don't live around each other. It's like you're kind of forced to. It's, but it's the modern world, because again, didn't they used to say that people who played gaming we're antisocial weirdos? It's like, no, but we're actually socializing together.
Yes, we are. Just away from everyone else.
Away from everybody else. All right. Well, enough of that stuff here. So we're really here to talk to Tom. Okay. So
believe it or not,
we're here to talk to Tom. So the first thing, we're going to ask Tom to do is to tell us a little bit about himself, who he is, what he does, and a little bit about his company, Throw Eye Games.
All right. I started Throw Eye Games around 2010 with two purposes in mind, which was to do some small writing work, adventure modules and such, and then kind of a jump from where we were a few minutes ago, a text-based online game that I've been writing for many years.
Ooh, nice. Talk about old school. Okay.
Well, I got bad news about that part of it, but
no,
there's good news coming though. That quickly took a back seat when some of the work that I started doing in the writing channel really took off. So I've put a lot of that stuff on hold to get through the backlog of things that I've wanted to get done. So really, in 2010, I had two focuses. Now, for the last 5-6 years, it's been mostly one focus: writing and publishing my own work for multiple systems, and doing so now, starting to do some freelancing for other companies. So I've written a bunch for Frog God. I've written for Fail Squad. I may do some writing for a few other firms here in the next year. But I have a serious backlog of work that needs to just get printed. When I say serious backlog, I mean I have between 15 and 20 adventures that are mostly written that need to get pushed out before I feel pretty good about what I have accomplished with that that area. Really focused on old school games, and I say old school games very fondly because I want to play the games. I want to write for games that I played when I was first introduced to the hobby in '82. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love Gamma World and BX, because that's what I started with, those two systems. So I just like to write for that stuff, and I write for that stuff because nobody else writes for that stuff.
For people who might not know what BX is, can you explain that?
Sure. I look at BX as basic and expert, which is the Moldvay, Cook, Marsh versions. Some people will throw BECMI into that mix. Some people will throw Holmes into that mix. I'm good with all of that, actually. But when I talk about BX, I really care mostly about Moldvay's basic and Cook Marsh expert. That first 7 to 12 levels of basic D&D and expert D&D are what I care about the most. And I've been doing a lot of work in that space as of late. So.
Okay, very cool. Yeah. So basically, for folks who may not know what he's taught, is in the history of gaming. There was the original books in the 70s. Then there was the Holmes Basic set, which was a book, blue box, and then the I always get his name right. Moldvay. Thank you. Yep. Which were the first basic and expert sets that came out, and then later on, a couple years later, there was the Frank Mesner ones, which were the red box, which most people seem to know. But this was around the same time. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was around as well. So they kind of coexisted at the same time. So that's where that originally came from. It's not that one was like you went from basic to advanced. You could go through basic and expert for a very long time. I just think the rules are probably a little more streamlined, maybe a little simpler, for lack of a better term, whereas the advanced got more complex. But I think they were still pretty interchangeable.
Sure. I mean, I gravitated then and still gravitate to now games where the rule book becomes, something that stays on the side of the table and you barely refer to it because the game is that simple. And that's what I like about first edition Gamma World. That's what I like about BX. That's what I like about Swords of Wizardry. Many of the games that I play, you just don't need the rule book. And if you can play a game without a rule book, it's just a lot better time. So.
Yeah, all the rules you need are right there on your character sheet, telling you what you need to do and what your options are.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, me and Scott have had discussions probably on the show about gaming, about how people say that the rules don't matter, and that's a whole other discussion. It's like, but it always boiled down to you need at least some kind of rule system to refer to, because you need some kind of mechanics to determine outcome. So you always need some kind of system, because if systems didn't matter, everybody would be playing the Great Dalmoody. or once upon a time,
or
what?
Amber.
Oh yeah, Diceless Amber. Yeah.
Storytelling games.
Yeah, it's like, because it's all everybody says nowadays, it's all the theater of the mind. It's all about. It's like, I agree to that to an extent, but you still need at least. Everything doesn't need to be constantly have your nose in the book, but you do need at least some kind of structure,
And the thing I always go to is, there should be multiple systems because you should always have a sort of the rules should model the genre. You know, if you're going to play a sword and sorcery game, you should have sword and sorcery rules. If you're going to play a Jason Bourne spy thing, it should give you the ability to parkour your way out of the American embassy. And if it's if it is playing a horror game, you need to have some way of generating a mechanical fear, even if there isn't any at the table. That always the rules should there should be individual rules for individual genres because so many of the genres are so far apart. What was it about the original Gamma World rules that sort of most attracted you when you first ran into them back in 1980?
Yeah, I played a good year at D&D before I went to science fiction, and that's only because I moved to a new town, and all the kids liked Star Wars and that kind of stuff, so they wanted to play a sci-fi game. So I picked up the box set, which I still own today, the original one. Yeah, I didn't get rid of that one. And we started playing that. And what I was immediately drawn to was, believe it or not, were the flowcharts.
Oh, yeah.
The flowcharts were the first thing that sucked me into that game because it made sense to me. Now, later on, I became an IT person and a software developer, and that was sort of – I look back at those days saying, yeah, I was destined because I like flowcharts. I like logic. I like things that take a certain path. So I was attracted to that. Also, the simplicity of the rules, 60 pages, you get everything you need, monsters, artifacts, character development, etc. To me, it was a very straightforward, simple game to play, and it fit the need of the group at the time, and we played it for a year and a half before we moved on to other things. So,
absolutely.
Very, very cool. So, yeah, so folks are just listening or are listening to it. It's this is a game. This is a game-heavy episode. So, for those who are listening, but we are talking about Gamma World, so it is post-apocalyptic game, and we know that that's Jared's favorite game. So, but a big thing I wanted to talk about because Tom currently has a Kickstarter project on Kickstarter, of course, for a Gamma World fanzine. So, why a Gamma World fanzine is what I wanted to ask you.
Well, I rarely am able to meet the Kickstarter initiatives when they pop out. I always tend to be a little late to the party, but I got my I heard about this one early, and I was like, I got to do another fanzine. I got to do something else.
What? Let me stop you for a second. When you said the Kickstarter initiative, what are you referring to? So
Kickstarter puts out initiatives every so many months to try to spur a little bit of activity. And they came up with a initiative called the Zine Quest. And they reached out to folks like me and others that said, hey, you've done projects before. Would you be interested in doing something along this? You've done a bunch of game-heavy Kickstarters. Why not do a fanzine? And I looked at it and said, yeah, I've been wanting to do a Gamma World one. And I'm kind of mired in doing the BX one every quarter, and I'm writing a bunch of stuff for North Texas and a bunch of other stuff, but I can squeak a fanzine in for Gamma World anytime. And so I basically said, I'm throwing myself into the ring, and I launched on February 1st, the first day you were able to do it on Kickstarter. And I want to produce a really cool little zine that has adventures, new mutated monsters, some tech, more flow charts that you can use. And then I've just been piling on more stuff as we meet lots of little stretch goals. It's not expensive, and that's what I want. I want it to be a little book, a little digest book that you can have at the table or use to prep for games and have some useful content. So
now for, folks, we may have a lot of listeners who may not know as much about gaming and fanzines. So let's talk about, just for a moment here, all of us, let's talk about the fanzine, especially for gaming. Like, for those who know, fanzines were, of course, gaming magazines, because especially
any kind of magazines, the zine world.
Oh, the zine, this fanzine,
was huge in the 90s.
Even prior to that, in the 80s,
before the internet came and broke it all. I think that's really what saw the end of the zine. was it was this moment when desktop publishing meant anyone could be a publisher and reasonably and with a reasonable price lay out, illustrate, and publish their own media for the very first time.
Well, and also to explain what the fanzine is, it is a fan produced content, whether it's for gaming, music. There was all kinds of fanzines out there. Like, especially again, Scott said the early '90s. A friend of mine used to do this underground music fanzine, and he put out half a dozen issues of it. It was all on newsprint, printed really cheap. I actually wrote a couple little tiny, quarter page, little half page little pieces for about whatever music was going on at the time. So fanzines are this self-published content that people do, and especially in gaming, the history of gaming, there was a lot of fanzines out there which popped up for especially for D&D. That's how if I remember correctly, Tom, correct me if you know this one. Judges Guild, isn't that how Judges Guild started, by doing kind of like fanzine content almost, or no?
I think they did very low cost adventure modules for entry point.
Mm-hmm. As long as we're on the subject, I'm going to have to point out that the wife used to do a zine here in the city of Seattle in the 90s called Sacred City that she and her friends published, and we still have a few of the old issues boxed up. But as zines were a thing, and it was a thing that kind of faded away once everybody had a website.
Yeah, and people used to do it, especially for gaming, because at the time, the big gaming magazines, especially starting in the mid to late 70s and 80s, you had Dragon magazine, you had White Dwarf, you had Steve Jackson, Space Gamer, you had Ares magazine,
and let's not forget, Pagan Publishing started with a zine called The Unspeakable Oath back in 1990, when those guys were still in college in Columbia, Missouri. That's how Pagan Publishing started, as a zine publisher.
So fanzines were a way for the fans to put out their own content. Like if they felt something was missing or they had a really exciting idea, they would put it out there. So like you said, Scott had said it was right. The fanzine kind of went away once the internet came around. I mean, people still did it, but not like they did. Basically, it got replaced by blogs, I guess. But the fanzine was something tangible. It was tactile. You could touch it. You could have it. You were excited for it to come out. You could look through it and read it. So
and permanent.
It's permanent.
Yeah, there was something about those paper zines that was more permanent.
Yeah.
So that's what the fanzine is, folks. So apparently, like Tom had explained, Kickstarter did this initiative to kind of bring back the fanzine, and a bunch of different publishers I know jumped on that. I know Steve Jackson Games is doing one for the new fantasy trip that they brought back into print. I'm waiting for my copy of the Legacy edition. Mm-hmm. It's like a 15-pound box. It's like there's so much content. It's insane. I'm so excited to get it. So, as Tom was saying, that he did say that he wanted to do one for Gamma World. Now you said BX, so from what I've seen on your site, you have an ongoing fanzine that you're producing that's called Back to Basics.
Right, that's correct.
So Tom was currently producing one for. Again, the basic and expert editions of Gamma World of D&D called Back to Basics. So he's already producing fanzines. So right. he took the opportunity to do the Gamma World one, which I am thankful for, because I'm always excited to see new content get out there for Gamma World.
Yeah. Well, zines are a great way for fans to celebrate the game that they love. It doesn't matter if it's old or new. It's just a great way to get people some new content, some additional stuff that they can use, and then just it gives you the warm and fuzzies to make something that people will love to have in their hands. So,
absolutely. I'm thinking back to when I first ran into gaming, and it was a tiny market, and I know that there were people who I have friends now who I have since found out that they were, some of their first writings was with FASA back when they were in Chicago, and they were desperately cranking out, stuff for Traveler and for the Doctor Who game and all that kind of stuff. And their first publishing was like at 17 or something when they first got published. But I was, when I first ran into this stuff, I had, brimming with ideas that were never going to go anywhere, because where was I going to find a venue to publish it? Now that we're old enough, and now the technology is at our fingertips, where we can make all the stuff we were thinking of when we were 12. Oh my God, that is an enormous amount of fun.
Well, what's great about fanzines for me, and actually writing in general, is that I can produce content very, very quickly. I can build a fanzine in just like 3 days. However, I'm usually waiting on somebody's submission or some artwork or map, and that's usually what drags it out. And that's why I'm only committed to doing the BX fanzine quarterly. I can get the fanzine done in 2 weeks. I just need to wait for everybody else to do their part. So for Gamma World, I haven't committed to the regularity yet, but I know that with the success of the first one already, I will plan on doing another one, and then we'll just take it one at a time and see what happens.
Yeah, because that was going to be my very next question was the Gamma World fanzine going to continue after the Kickstarter?
Yeah, it definitely will. And when I reached out to Jim Ward for an interview, he sent me a message back saying that he would, if I wanted any articles from him, he would be glad to write them. So that actually makes it, future issues something really interesting to have some of his work in my little fanzine.
Oh, that's so exciting to hear that he's going to do future content for it. And as far as I'm concerned, it makes it canon because it's coming from Jim Ward.
Right.
It's
official.
Right.
No, that's fantastic. As soon as I crawl out from underneath a couple of my own Kickstarter, which is weighing me down, as soon as I crawl out from a couple of other projects I've got going, I'm going to absolutely scribble some stuff out, because that other guy on the screen there, that guy down in Florida, he has ridiculously gotten me interested in Gamma World again. And it's just, I should not be, I should be looking forward to other projects, but no, all of a sudden I'm interested in Gamma World again. And I absolutely have to get this out of my system, or it's just going to bounce around inside me like a BB until my head explodes.
Sure.
I've got to get it out.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing wrong with loving Gamma World, okay?
Dolmars are stupid. That's a direct quote from you, Mr. Wallace. Dolmars are stupid.
Dolmars are stupid. That's a phrase I came up with like a long time ago. We were talking about Gamma World, and we were talking about it, and I was like, as much as I love Gamma World, Dolmars are stupid. I go.
Well, I think the entire economy in Gamma World is stupid. I mean, who wants gold? Who wants Domars? It's like there's other things to get that have more value. So
yeah, exactly.
But putting it to the context of when it was created,
sure.
Okay, like 1977, and basically it was D&D in the future. It was D&D, like Metamorphosis Alpha was a dungeon crawl in space. And Gamma World was post-apocalyptic D&D. So, of course, they're going to have gold because that's what they knew.
Right.
Yeah. Coinage, something that rattles in a bag.
And of course, they had to come up with something futuristic. So they came up with, let's have these colored plastic coins that represent money.
You got to give the guys credit who did the original Fallout. The whole thing about bottle caps is hilarious.
Oh yeah,
because it almost feels like that bottle cap thing is a deliberate shot at the Dolmar. I mean, it almost feels like they played that in high school or whatever and went, yeah, we're not gonna have plastic coins in the future. We're gonna have something like, I don't know, shirt buttons or something that has fallen off the survivors that we're now trading around like they're coins or something, But yeah, anyways, we're gonna have to do something about the Domars. I desperately want to come up with some sort of ridiculous reason that Domars exist, to justify this ridiculous idea in Gamma World. Like,
maybe we could work on an article and we could submit it to the fanzine.
I I'm all in favor of this, sir.
I would accept that gladly.
So
we can retcon the Dolmar.
So it's going to continue, and but just also about the just one more question about the fanzine was basically what edition. I can assume what edition it's going to focus on, but I want to hear it from you. What edition do you feel the zine content really focuses on? Because there's 7 editions of Gamma World now, so
it's got to be the first, of course.
Of course,
to me, it's the one that's the easiest to play, the simplest set of rules, and it's sort of what started the whole thing. And people who play Gamma World know the first edition and how it all started, and that's what we're going to target.
Excellent.
Now, and speaking of Gamma Worlds, from what I've seen, because on a previous show, we had one of our shows. Our topic is called Off Topic, where we just talk about a lot of random stuff, again, post-apocalyptic. I came across your 2 North Texas RPG Con Gamma World modules, and we talked about them and kind of gave an overview and reviewed them on the show already. So we've talked about your content already, and I guess I just really wanted to know is what inspired you, and you might have already covered it, but let's just kind of reiterate it. What inspired you to create Gamma World modules? Because you said you were already doing BX content. Why jump off to Gamma World? What inspired you?
All right, so funny story. Every year when I go to North Texas, and I've been there the last 5-6 years, I take a look at the game schedule and I see what's missing. What is nobody, what's nobody running? In the first year, I think it was 3 years ago, I noticed that nobody was running Gamma World. I said, how can this travesty exist? Somebody should be running Gamma World. So I said, I'll run Gamma World. So I made the first adventure, which was Into the Wreckage. The book turned out bigger than I wanted it to be for a con game, but I was like, well, then people get some extra content. I think it was like 40 pages, 48 pages, something crazy. And I had people like wanting to sit in on the game, and I think I generated 12 pre-gens and ran out. It was like people just crowded the table, wanted to play because nobody else was running Gamma World. And because of that first year success, I said, I'm going to do this every year. So then last year I did A Dish That Serves No One. And then this year, this June, I'll have my 3rd Gamma World installment there. I'm also going to be running Top Secret, BX, and Swords and Wizardry. So I'll be running 4 games there. But the Gamma World will be packed. It always is. And I use the same pre-gens every year, too. So people try to get the same one they did last year.
I think I need to make an effort to get out to North Texas RPG Con.
It is a great con because almost every game is represented. Now, the only reason why I'm running Top Secret is because now that Merle Rasmussen is running his new World Order version, the new one, I want to run the old one. See, again, I'm back to the old stuff. I like the stuff that I played when I was in grammar school and high school. So I'm going to go back and run the original Top Secret now that Merle's moved on to other stuff. So I like the old games, and if people keep sitting at my tables to play Gamma World, I'll keep writing Gamma World. That's
the 2 scenarios that we looked at were the exploring the Air Force base that had been sealed up during the war, that the orbital junk is crashing on the community, and the one with the aircraft wreckage that leads to a base. And the 2 things I loved about both those scenarios was, despite the fact that these are unpillaged ancient sites, you built in these great reasons, these great organic reasons why the place isn't just a giant grocery store of stuff for the players. That these places melted down from the inside and failed, and supplies were used up and they're damaged, and it's not just racks and racks of Mark V blaster rifles. Right. You did a great job, very organic.
Mark 7 blaster rifles, Scott. Okay,
see, there you go. you have counted nerd coup on me. It is
sorry, so I had to. Sorry.
All right, your nerd is stronger.
Yeah. Well, I'm very, very big on. I too am a huge fan of post-apocalyptic in almost every possible way. Like, I love the Mad Max movies. I play pretty much only post-apocalyptic video games. So So for me, it's like I don't want it to be easy. There shouldn't be, like you said, Scott. There shouldn't be a grocery store of stuff. It's like you're a scavenger, and you should celebrate the fact that you found one thing or two small things. Not I can't carry all this stuff out. I don't like that kind of gaming in general, but mostly in this setting, it's got to be every little bit of thing you find. You either can put to use or you can treasure it because you're never going to find it again. So yeah, I like that. I like that kind of game.
Well, I agree completely. And both those scenarios created really nice organic reasons for the scarcity, which is always one of the problems when I was certainly when I was a kid, when I was 12 or 10 years old, designing Gaming World scenarios. As a kid, I was always sort of like, well, if the place has never been broken into before, isn't it going to be just stuffed to the gills with shit? But if it's been broken into, isn't it going to be empty? I mean, I've got to find some way of creating a balance between the two. And I don't think I ever really quite got there with my own material. But reading your stuff, I was like, that was the question I was trying to answer in 1979. God damn it. So, really happy with them.
Well, one of my favorite parts of the second one I wrote, which was A Dish That Serves No One, was the fact that base inside that mountain definitely went to shit. There was a battle inside for survival amongst people who were friends and, compatriots. So, it got down to where there was no water, no food, and you were willing to kill the guy that you used to call your best friend just to get something to eat. And it was, if you read the whole thing in its entirety, the story is pretty clear. It went sideways in there. And
it's down to the last cannibal who started.
Oh, yeah.
That's how that scenario went. And it's extra cool because these are the ancients, the ultra civilized people who made the world possible, and they're eating and shitting their buddy. That was a nice lesson for the survivors who go, oh, maybe the ancients aren't so cool, maybe they're just fucking animals, man. And I really like that part,
Everyone goes down to their base instincts at some point. So
yeah. And one of the things I love about Gamma World is somebody described it as, I don't know, post-apocalyptic Buck Rogers. This idea that we're going to get up to, technology that is practically magic in its applications and still manage to hunt each other for food in the ruins of our high-rise apartment buildings if we fuck it up.
Right. Right.
It does not we'll be wrestling over the last phaser, if we get really super high tech, we can still go down to that kind of animal level. And that was really weird in Gamma World, that there was this technological utopia hundreds of years in the future, very Star Trek-y or, whatever, high-end fantasy science fiction, and we still managed to ruin it.
Right. I think that's you can say that for a lot of civilizations over time. So
yeah, fair enough.
Now, but also let me ask you, you've kind of touched on this a bit when we've been having our conversation, but one of the general questions we kind of ask is, what did you see missing from current games that inspired you to create your games, to create your basic expert content, your Gamma World content? Did you see something missing with the current games that made you want to do this, or what drove you to do this?
Well, it's funny because I've got a lot of friends in the industry, some guys that work for Frog God and other companies, and I always jokingly say, I'm going to put out the low end of the market. I'm going to do the black and white old school look. I'm going to do the inexpensive books. You guys go ahead and build your 400-page full color crunchy books, but I'm going to keep generating those 16 to 48-page black and white books that, I know that there's a generation of people that really that brings back fond memories. And to me, that's sort of what I want to do. Sure, would it be nice to build like a 500-page hardcover setting that would be beautiful to look at? Yeah. But I'd rather churn out 20 smaller books in that same time frame. So
you must be getting a better endorphin hit, being able to do more successes, over a year, where takes 3 years to churn out a Delta Green book, but you're getting a hit every season, right? Or even faster than that.
Well, the thing is, I've also have a weird way towards my creativity. I basically get inspired by lots of different things at once and will try to move to what's most inspiring at that moment and work on that. And then the next day I might be doing something slightly different on something else. That's why I have 20 or 30 things sort of half finished, because I'm always moving around. That works for me. Some people look at it as kind of frenetic and crazy, but I look at it as I let my inspiration drive me that day. And if today it's going to be working on the BX fanzine, and then tomorrow it's going to be on, a module from June, for June's North Texas, or finishing up a 3-book series for somebody else, I do that. I meet all my deadlines, but I may not be smashing through them all in one continuous fashion. Have one set of content, for a week. I might hop through 4 or 5 different things. That works for me. That's my style. I'm like a ferret, man. I can't look at one thing. I got to look at lots of different things and move. So
I don't blame you. It keeps the creative juices flowing. Having to work on something for months at a time or a year at a time is exhausting.
I've done it, and it's not my preferred way of creativity. So
no, I appreciate that. I really do. Did you say, well, I guess we sort of asked what was missing. And you were talking about these sort of small bite-size, easily digestible, playable in one night or two sort of scenarios and things like that, not epic, things like, I guess I think of Bookhounds of London, or, which is this giant thing for Trail of Cthulhu that's out that's, again, full color, 300 pages, but you got to commit to several months of playing that. When you're doing these small, digestible, easily, sort of managed projects, what's your biggest challenge for that? Is it that, it sounds like you do have an issue with jumping from project to project, but that only seems to energize the individual project you're on at the moment. Are there any other real challenges? That almost seems like an advantage, a feature, not a bug to your process. It doesn't really feel like a problem.
Well, my biggest problem is that I can only, I can do layout, I can get things published and printed, and I can organize that stuff. I'm pretty efficient when it comes to making sure I hit deadlines. But I'm, wrangling the cats, man. Just getting the artists to do their bit and getting the editors to do their bit. Although I have a really good editor now, so I'm very pleased that he's able to keep up with my sort of me pushing stuff at him constantly. But in the past, it had been hard to get people to look at my work and commit to be able to review it in a period of time. And if I can surround myself with people that I trust, like, for example, the guy who does my fanzine covers, he's done all 7 and will do all of them as for the foreseeable future. Matt Ray, his name is. He's out of Florida, Jared. He's out of Jacksonville, I believe. He's a workhorse, man. If I give him a timeline, it's done every single time. And those are the people that keep me moving. If I get caught up with an artist or somebody who can't meet the deadline, that just kills my mojo. It just saps my creativity. So keep getting the right people to work with on your projects. Because they're small, you don't need a lot of them, which is great, right? I don't need 14 artists. I need 1, 2, maybe 3 sometimes. Getting them all lined up, getting them all firing, staying on top of them while I'm doing my part gets the work done quickly. But if I had to do, if I'm on a one-man show, so if I had to wrangle up 20 artists and 2 cartographers and 3 editors on a 400-page book, I would never finish it. It's not going to happen for me. So those are my challenges, is keep it small, or face the problem of trying to, be a project manager, not a writer.
Yeah, exactly.
That made me think about something else related to the fanzine, because in the fanzine, I guess I should ask also, or did we cover that? Like, what kind of content you plan on having especially the Gamworld fanzine? I guess like mini adventures, artifacts, mutations, I guess all that kind of stuff, right?
Right, definitely. I'm going to definitely have one main adventure. I'm going to have another small side adventure. I'm going to have several new creatures, some new tech, lots of flowcharts, because I love flowcharts, man. I just love flowcharts. So I'm going to have flowcharts there. So you can, and by the way, I love the ones in the Gamma World rulebook. However, some of those things are so excessive and take so long to get through that I want to boil them down to smaller bits but still make them challengeable. And then also I'm going to do – now I have an interview with Mr. Ward, so that's cool. I'll probably have a little introduction, talk about why I'm doing it. And I have a awesome little comic already from Travis Hansen, who's the comic book artist who does my BX fanzine. He's already drawn it. I'd like to share it, but I don't want to spoil it, so I'm going to wait. But he did a half-page comic, and as long as people like that kind of thing, we'll just keep doing that kind of thing.
Fantastic. When you're talking about smaller flowcharts, are you going to do it for things like, let's say the players just want to jimmy a door and they don't have the card. They don't have an ID card. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be like a flow chart for, okay, you and your primitive knowledge of the ancients and their technology will now try and get this door open by popping a panel or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
Oh, that's good.
So he's like, you probably can't see here because it's too.
Oh, I can see it.
But the top one here, look how small that one is.
Yeah.
Then, of course, I have a bigger one, but that's for something complicated. To me, that's the idea of the flow chart is, because it's I write for con games mostly, you got to be able to get through it in a period of time, right? If you're sitting there rolling for 20 minutes trying to get through a flow chart, we've missed the sweet spot on that. So for me, it's 5 minutes or less, you're through the flow chart. 5 minutes maximum, obviously.
Yeah. You're
through the flow chart, moving on. Everything from wedge doors to broken terminals to sort of security that's gone sideways that isn't quite right anymore, so it needs a little special handling, to understanding how to use a device you've never seen before. Those are all great little flowcharts. And Gamma World, the rulebook has some great ones. But if you look back on some of those pages, man, there's like 100 boxes in one flowchart. That's a little bit too complicated. So,
yeah.
And Scott, that's funny. You should say about a primitive trying to get through a malfunctioning door without an ID card, because it brings me back to remember. But one friend of mine in high school used to run our Gamma World game. Usually, most of the time, it was just me and him, and he'd have NPCs. But there was one little campaign we did where we had some other players, and I think this was one of my original characters. We wound up at this cybernetic installation, and we got in there, and we wound up getting trapped in there because we got like detained and put somewhere. And we were never able to get out of the level. Like, no matter how hard we tried, he made it too complex. It wasn't just a flowchart thing. It's like he just made it to where we tried everything we could think of to try to get through doors, we could never get it. We got basically our characters just died in there, because we didn't finish the game. We could never get out. So it made me think about that when you were talking about that.
Well, something as simple as a door should be a death trap in the right situation. And I guess this goes to the question about your inspirations. I was going to say that one of the most Gamma World things I have ever read, besides Hero's Journey and The Unrequited Hero, which are right on the money Gamma World.
Excellent books.
Is Eternity Road, which is
Jack McDivitt.
Yeah, Jack McDivitt's Eternity Road is one of the most Gamma World things ever, and it made the most simple things in the ancient world deadly. It did a great job of making, we're just going to open this room up, and oh darn, there's been some gas buildup on the other side, and you and your torches out in the hallway just ignited a room full of methane or whatever that was trapped from decomposing whatever, and now you've been blown up for just opening a door. Worse than the worst creepy Tomb of Horrors traps, really. What are your inspirations? Are you familiar with McDivitt's Eternity Road?
I know of it. I've never read it. I've read Hero's Journey a couple times and absolutely love that story and wish for a third book.
Yeah,
like most do. I also recently read Wool.
Oh yeah.
We've covered the we read the whole Silo trilogy and reviewed all 3 books on the show.
Yeah,
and where they may have more understanding of technology in that, it's the whole, spoiler alert, it's the whole fact that there's others out there that they don't know about that's really breaks your brain, So it's I like that kind of thing that See, I'm a big fan of twists, so I like to write my adventures with a little bit of a twist here and there. Not too many of them and not obvious ones, but I like to have some twists in there so people, say, "Oh, geez, I didn't see that coming." And with Gamma World, it's always a trick to balance the environment in the adventure so that you don't just ruin parties right out of the gates, right? Like the world is deadly, but if you really made it as deadly as it should be, nobody lives, right? Yeah. So instead of playing Gamma World, you're playing Call of Cthulhu, where everyone goes crazy. So it's like you got to make sure that it's an enjoyable game and people can survive and advance, but you still got to reinforce that, like you said. There could be gas behind that door, and someone might not make it because they didn't think it through all the way. So it's always a balance of how deadly do you make it.
What are your inspirations, fictional inspirations, for when you start to crack open something Gamma World like? When you think of a Gamma World environment, are there certain fictional people that were most influential in your ideas of your Gamma World as you see it?
Well, I read a lot of science fantasy when I was a kid. I do like the more of the post-apocalyptic world than the dystopian, although I like sort of the ideas of both. I read a lot of stuff, like I read Space Vikings and Journey and all those old pulpy ones from the 50s and 60s were fantastic. But I tend to take a look at what's going on today, and then see if I could make a Gamma World twist of it. So a lot of the ideas I come up with are like, what would that look like if it was in a different setting? That same situations in a post-apocalyptic setting, and then I usually twist it up a little bit. So,
okay.
I read a lot. I read mostly fantasy, however, but lately I've been reading a lot more science fantasy and a little bit more science fiction.
Okay.
Just because it's just hitting me now. So.
Are you familiar, speaking of inspirations, are you familiar with Michael Moorcock's Jewel in the Skull series?
I know of Michael Moorcock, but not the Jewel in the Skull series, no.
It's got some Gamma World in it. It is a post-apocalyptic world filled with mutants and weird high tech, and and in it magic and technology have gotten confused.
Yeah,
and it's a real hybrid. It maybe it's more like Thundar the Barbarian than it is Gamma World, but there's definitely a very
and Thundar is not Gamma World.
Well, yes, it is.
It is.
It's pretty much, yeah.
Well, I wasn't going to bring this up today because we're sort of talking about Gamma World, but I'm in the process of finalizing a new game system that is called Desolantia, which is a post-apocalyptic fantasy. So basically, high magic implodes, and now you're back to a very hard surviving type of world.
Yeah.
It's a D2 system, actually. So it's very binary. So zeros and ones on dice that you roll. ChessX made some really cool ones. And it's skill-based, and it's fun to play. But because I love post-apocalypse settings so much, I even took a fantasy setting and made it so that it was like a disaster, and now you're starting over. So
that's and I love that idea. Hell, Robert E. Howard did it with Conan's Hyboria. Conan's Hyboria is set in a post-magical Armageddon world, which is made it even more it gives me a better understanding of that world, which you think of it as a post-apocalyptic world.
Right.
Well, speaking of inspirational books, I know Scott, you mentioned Eternity Road, which again is one of my favorites as well. Tom, are you familiar with the Andre Norton books, Daybreak 2250, also known as Starman's Son?
I've not read that one, no.
Starman's Son, very Gamma World-ish, but even better, a lesser-known book by Andre Norton she wrote a book called No Night Without Stars. Okay? No Night Without Stars. Very lesser known. I discovered the name of it like maybe a few years ago, Scott, and every time I go to these used bookstores that I go to around here, I find stacks I'll find 5 No Nights Without Stars, whereas I've never seen them before. But No Night Without Stars is very Gamma World. It is track you down the copy, or I'll get you a copy of that. Okay, No Night Without Stars is, to me, a great post-apocalyptic Gamma World book. It's, you got the primitives and you got the mutants who are messing with them, but then they run upon a cybernetic installation with a crazy freaking think tank. Basically, that's what it is. It's like, a lot of people might say, oh, like Portal with, this, it's like, you know what? This book was written in like the 60s or 70s, way before Portal was around. But it's that crazy cybernetic installation is in this book. I mean, I just kind of spoiled it, but it is very Gamma World. That's one of my favorite Gamma World inspired books right there.
Yeah. If you're a fan of Hero's Journey and then Unrequited Hero, yeah, you'll dig on some of these titles. You really will.
Hero's Journey. I remember that part. I think it was the end. I don't know if it was the first or second book when they get.
Are we going to stat out the Morse? We absolutely have to have stats for the Morse.
Yeah, I think I would do that for issue 2.
Okay.
Clues have to live. Yes, clues.
Sorry, you were saying. I'm sorry, I interrupt with the Morse thing. What were you saying, Tom?
Well, I was just saying that what really brought home Hero's Journey for me, or the book pair, was when they actually go down into that facility and they try to blow it up, and it's like, yeah, you're riding around in the back of a moose, through swamps and stuff, dealing with these weird creatures, and now you're down in this actually high tech facility, and it's just nutty. It's nutty. That's what I love about those kind of Gamma World books, is that they just mix that stuff right up.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess at its best, it should feel like a fantasy world. And then just behind the curtain, there's this reveal of what the world really is.
Right.
And I like those kind of books because here's a debate I've always had, me and Scott always have, and there's a interpretation of Gamma World that people think that it's totally wahoo over the top. Now, I could see where people are coming from with that. Okay, but that's not how I or even Scott played it. We didn't play it hard science, but we took it serious. We weren't wahoo like they did with 7th edition. They made it so over the top that it's way too ridiculous for me. It's like, it's not enjoyable, And I know
I wanted to play Gamma World like. Eventually, I ended up playing Fallout. When the very first Fallout computer game came out, my first thought was, holy shit, it's the Gamma World I wanted to play. That was sort of my reaction to the first one.
And the fact that Gamma World's background and the history of each edition of Gamma World, the world that you're in, it was caused by different reasons for each edition, sort of muddies the waters with Gamma World. I prefer the reason for the apocalypse and what's presented in the first edition. To me, that feels right. And some of these other ones where there's all this alien invasion and other stuff, I don't want that. I don't want that.
Well, the idea that we solved every social problem except us.
Yeah, we screwed it up. I love that.
Yeah.
That's the
we even fixed the environment. I love where they're going. They've reversed the damage to the environment. The seas are alive again. The whales are back. The rainforest is fantastic. And we still blew it, even after we fixed all that.
Well, that's the thing is all 3 of us are children from the Cold War. Okay, we grew up with the Cold War and the fear that the Russians were going to come down the street and so on and so forth. So having that apocalypse being this whole nuclear devastation, at least in my mind, makes sense to me because that's what I grew up with. That's what I knew. It's like, yes, there will be an apocalypse because there will be nuclear bombs and there will be radiation.
But it'll be that cool 50s radiation that makes giant ants.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's kind of how I always looked at it. This is sort of a 50s retro future,
right?
Thing. Literally, Buck Rogers blew up. We are now on the ruins of Buck Rogers.
Yeah,
and that worked. Of course, then again, Buck Rogers was post-apocalyptic. Now that I think about it, the original novels, Armageddon 24, 40, whatever it is, it's a post-apocalyptic world. shockingly. I guess I should have said Flash Gordon, but whatever. But yeah, I like the original terrible ending to the world because it was like, yes, you can fix a hunger, disease, the environment, the economy. Everyone has plenty, and it just doesn't matter because we're still going to find reasons to kill each other over minutia, essentially. Yep. Hell, they even fixed racism. I mean, in the 22nd or 23rd century world of Gam World, there's no discussion of racial bias or white supremacy or any of that. We fixed that too, but then we still found reasons to join and call somebody else the other, and be, internally xenophobic about it.
All those factions,
Yeah.
You mean cryptic alliances?
Yep. And I love your take on the cryptic alliances in that one scenario where the whole thing about the aircraft that's been knocked down and he's taken to the base. That thing right there, that was one of the best looks into the horrors of the apocalypse as it's happening. That was a great look backwards. It really was. It was it gave me a really good sense of what that world was like in a tiny number of words.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always found to be one of the few shortcomings of the first edition Gamma World was the fact there wasn't a lot of history with the factions. And I felt like if they had fleshed out another couple pages in the factions, I know there was some fan stuff that was done later that talked about it, but I would have loved to have some canon on what those factions really did to each other to sort of set the world up for you. So I did take some liberty, did some research, but I did take some liberty with that and put it in there, and I really like having a little extra meat in that.
I myself always wanted to find a way to tie the current crop of cryptic alliances to some of the pre-war factions. Like, somehow some of them have grown up afterwards, but maybe there's some who still think they're fighting the war.
Right.
But they're still going to somehow be the last guy standing from this fight that doesn't have any relevance whatsoever anymore, but
like robots recalling the troops from space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I do like that the fanzine, just to go back to that for a second. I do like that you're going to be doing these other mini scenarios because one of the things that I always loved was in issue 52 of Dragon, the Cavern of the Subtrain. It was a mini adventure, and I loved it. I just love that little adventure because that I like that kind of stuff because those are little snippets, little things that you could drop into if you're running a current Gam World campaign, you could easily fit that in. Just modify it a little bit to make it work and whatever you have running. And I like when that little bit of that kind of content comes out because I like the mini adventures, like the Albuquerque Spaceport was a good mini adventure. I liked Cavern of the Subtrain. So I assume you're going to be doing kind of stuff like that, like these little mini modules.
Right. Just as a little bit of a quick spoiler for the fanzine, the main adventure in the fanzine will be a facility that actually was experimenting with mutations before the war, and there will be potential to have some of your mutations reversed if you get in there and you pull the right switches. So some interesting things like, you've got those negative mutations. Maybe you can fix those. Maybe you can get a new mutation if you play around with the switches in a weird way.
Oh, that flow chart's not going to be simple. That's not going to be a four-stop.
That one might be a little more complicated, sure.
Yeah.
Or you're trying to get rid of the bad one, but accidentally, I got rid of the one that was really good and helpful.
Yeah.
Oops.
Right, exactly. So that's the main one. And then there'll be a smaller one that'll take up less pages. That'll be just an extra one because I want to make sure there's two. So
yeah. Well, I'm thrilled by that, only because I like the idea you can retcon the idea that some of these mutations are the result of something other than classic radiation, that it's some other high-tech magic that the ancients released during the wars, and it's just turning everybody inside out.
You mean nanotechnology?
Yeah. Maybe.
It's that whole world where magic and technology merge, and you don't know the difference anymore. And what were they doing before the war? They were doing some crazy stuff, and hey, you just happen to find a place that's still sort of functioning. What do you want to do about it? So that's what we'll build as the main adventure. That'll be the center of the fanzine. So
cool.
I don't know about you, Scott, and I don't know about the fans. I am so excited to have this fanzine come out, just to see the content and the future content in it. Now,
I really hope you've been able to find the time to throw you a few thousand words. I would love to be able to submit.
Yeah, I would love to take it. I would love to take user submissions. Believe me.
Now the Kickstarter, for people who don't know about it yet, I'm sure I posted a link on the post for this show, but people who are just listening to it, you could find it on Kickstarter. I assume that if you just do a search for Gamazine, it'll come up.
First thing. Yep.
First thing. So, folks, check that out. It is a reasonable price. You could get yourself a PDF for what, $3? $3.
Mm-hmm.
PDF for $3. You could get for $5. You could get the PDF and the print version. But the print version is basically what, just a coupon code for Drive-Thru-RPG, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, you're gonna pay wholesale base printing costs and shipping through RPG, but the money that you're giving me is really just to pay for the cover art, the cartography, the editing, and just sort of getting the thing lined up and nice and neat. So,
yeah, and folks, don't fret about that, because the actual production cost for Drive-Thru-RPG, depending, I've only printed like playing cards on Drive-Thru cards. I've never printed any books on there, but I'm sure the prices, folks, I don't know what it would be, but I'm sure the price will be pretty low, and you just got to pay for the shipping
right.
for that, folks. It's not that expensive, but also think of you're supporting a small, tiny, independent company.
Artisanal. This is artisanal gaming at its finest.
It's fine. So you're helping out the independents, the small producers, to be able to produce more content. It's not a very expensive price. And we've already looked at a couple of the bits of content that Tom has put out, and it's very good. So so for the price you're paying for this little bit of content, folks, nothing to fret about. You know what? Skip going out to for that steak dinner just once in a month, and you could well cover the price of printing the fanzine 10 times over. So,
yeah, the estimate on the on 24 to 28 pages is going to come in a little under $3.
Okay, folks. So you're paying $5 plus another $3, and the only thing with the drive-thru is the shipping's a little expensive.
Right,
but,
you capitalize on getting a couple things at once. So
yeah, exactly. So, but still, very reasonable price. So again, folks, it's called. It's basically on the Kickstarter. It's called Gamma Zine, GAMMA space ZINE. Just go to Kickstarter. You can find it. I've also posted a whole single post to it on the blog. So if you just go to podcast@groundzero.com, it'll be a post. I've done that in the last week, and it'll also be in the description of the post for this show's podcast. And how many more days do we still have left running on that, Tom?
It ends next Friday, so you got 7 more days.
So we got 7 more days. Tom has already pulled in over 900 already, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
All right, so $900 for $3 and $5 pledges, folks. He's got a lot of support for this, and he's got more. And if we could get some more support for Tom to raise more money, we could get more pages, more content out there.
Yep.
And
what's your next stretch goal?
It's 1050 for 4 more pages of content, and basically what that'll be is I've got some monsters and some tech that I was kind of saving for issue 2. Hell, I'll throw it issue 1. That's all. So we're going to start putting more of the stuff that I've sort of stretched out. We'll just pile it into this first issue. There'll be, like I said, I got an interview from Jim Ward. I already have an idea for an interview with somebody for issue 2, so I'll work on that. But yeah, we'll just pile more content in. I mean, for me, writing words is pretty easy. So I can fill that sucker right up with good stuff. It's a matter of, okay, do I want to buy more art? Do I build more flow charts? Do I want to add a whole different topic? Like in my fanzine for basic and expert, I do product reviews. I was going to stay away from product reviews for Gamma World. But if people want to see a product review, I may do that.
Okay.
Very good. So again, folks, it's Tom Wilson. He's from Throw Eye Games, and it's spelled just like it sounds. Throw Eye Games.
Gotta ask, where'd the name come from?
It's one of those that I don't necessarily regret, but I'd like to go back and change it. It's actually Throwy Games, and it's actually TH for Thomas, RO for Robert, WI for Wilson. That's me. I also have another logo that I use called Nomad Gaming, because I had a different leg of the business that was doing more like Magic the Gathering and stuff. Mm-hmm. I sometimes will use the Nomad Gaming logo instead, but it's basically Throwy Games.
So it's really pronounced Throwy Games.
Throwy, yep.
Okay, I'm calling it Throw Eye Games because I'm just trying to get people to be able to spell it. So
phonetics are good, sure.
So Throwy Games, again, go to Kickstarter right now if you're listening, and just look up Gamazine. It'll pop right up. Throw Tom $3 to get us even more content. Okay, so that's it, folks. We're going to wrap it up here. We've been going for a little bit over an hour, but we've gotten a lot of good conversation, a lot of good information out there. Tom, any final words for the folks out there?
Well, in general, it's I love talking with other gamers, especially gamers that were in the trenches with me back in the 80s, and we played the same games. I like producing materials for people who don't want to spend a fortune on a book. So, if you like the work that I make and you want to support it, I'm just going to keep making it till nobody wants it. So I can see for the foreseeable future continuing to make digest size, black and white, small page count products over and over and over until someone yells uncle. So enjoy.
You're not going to hear that from me, not anytime soon. I have been scouring the internet for little clusters and collections of old Gamma World stuff that was made back in the 80s. And yeah, I've exhausted most of the legal sources, and we'll say enough said about the ones that might not be quite so licensed. But
understood.
Oh, there's just not enough. Well,
it's sad to see that only 4 products were made for first edition, 4 legitimate products for first edition. You had the rule book, 2 adventures, and a screen. It needed more.
Yeah, absolutely.
It came too quickly. So
it did. All right, so that's it, folks. Again, if you're inclined, help support Tom to continue to give us good content. But we're going to wrap it up for this week, this episode. Next episode, we're going to do what we originally planned a off topic for this week, but I came across the Kickstarter and I wanted to go ahead and get Tom on here to talk about it before it was over. So again, Gamazine. So next one's going to be that we'll probably do it next week. We're going to do an off topic show because I got a lot of different things to talk about. That's not, not one specific focus. And as usual, like I always tell people, be socially responsible. If you are a person who watches the video on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. I also recommend that everybody goes to the blog, podcast@groundzero.com, because that is the central hub for everything. That's where I post everything, and it just goes out to the different social media, Facebook, Twitter, and things like that. You just subscribe to it via RSS feed or by email. You're only going to get stuff when I post it. So that's the main place to do that. And again, you could you'll be able to. You could also subscribe if you're an iTunes user. I post the audio onto iTunes. It's on the blog, but it's also on iTunes. And if you are on iTunes and you do listen to an iTunes, please give us a review or a rating on there just to make us look better. And that's it, folks. So that is it for this week. So again, Tom, we loved having you on. We love the conversation. Thank you for joining us this time. And that's it, folks. So we got Tom, me, Scott saying goodnight. So friends, we will see you in the Wastelands.